So, hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Our Story Conversations with PhilDev. I'm Emil Tapnio from PhilDev, of course. So, our guest today is Rey Banatao. Rey is a Firestarter at X, or formerly Google X. Prior to this, he was a CEO of Connora Technologies and co-founder of Entropy, Resins, and BluFlame technology. So, Connora invented a revolutionary technology that enables the next generation of materials to be reversible, removable, and recyclable. Their flagship product, Recycle Mine, is the industry's first truly recyclable epoxy thermoset and was recognized by the World Economic Forum as one of the top 10 innovations to watch in 2015. So Rey is also a scientist, having earned his degree in biochemistry and molecular biology from the University of California in Berkeley and a PhD in computational biology from the University of California in San Francisco. He's also an entrepreneur and an investor, and he specializes in the earliest stages of ideation to commercialization of hard technologies. He's also passionate about health of the planet, people, and ecosystems. His mission his mission is to yield a positive impact on society and the environment. Rey is also an early contributor to PhilDev, so I remember he would always fly to Manila. He was a speaker at the PhilDev Entrepreneurship Symposium, primarily the third one in 2016. So, Rey, how's everything? How are you?
Good. Good to see you, Emil, and always, nice to see PhilDev continuing on with its mission. Yes, everything's been good. It's interesting times right now, but we're doing our best.
That's good. Yeah, same thing here in Manila. We're trying to live by, get by, at the same time, really make the most of the current situation, no matter how dire it is. Speaking about startups and the current times, what would you be doing if you were in innovation and sustainability?
That's a good question. Before I got into sustainability, I actually originally became a scientist because I was just fascinated by biology and actually animals. Growing up, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, and along the way realized that I'm not good with blood. So I just focus on being a biologist, and I think that today that still interests me. I love the oceans and I love marine life, so I still would want to have an impact on society. And for me, biotech is something that's always been interesting. So something in that realm, I think.
Okay. Personally, how do you view sustainability?
Sustainability is really a journey. And maybe the best way I could speak about is my own personal journey. I don't think I got into this thinking I was an environmentalist. If I compare myself to actual people who I regard as environmentalists, I probably don't think of myself as an environmentalist. But it's been a journey. And so I think it all starts with that appreciation for, I guess, nature or the world or society, even in general. If you have that respect, you want to see things thrive or continue to either be the way they are or improve. And it's just hard to ignore the evidence that's been happening around us the last few decades around the environment. Global warming's the biggest, and I think thanks a lot to documentation and media and now science capturing what's been going on and studying what's been going on to the planet the last few decades, there's real evidence that it's changing and not for the better. Thinking about my first company that I started with my brother Desi, we didn't actually start that company to maybe solve a sustainability problem. We started with just a different idea in mind. But eventually the idea of sustainability came across kind of our desks, and we looked at it and thought about products that we could make to help address the world's need, for affecting climate change, and realized just internally within ourselves that it would be a good thing to focus on for our careers. And so that was the first start of where sustainability came to mind. That was around 2008. If you think about what was going on then, the price of petroleum was skyrocketing. The Prius finally came out, the electric or hybrid car came out. And so sustainability was starting to become more mainstream. And I think that combination was like the time where I started to realize that would be something worth devoting time to.
how are sustainability and innovation related to each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll try to keep the answer short. I probably could go on and on about this. So I grew up in Silicon Valley. Dado's my father. We were surrounded by innovation growing up. There's no way to avoid that. We grew up across the street, literally from Apple Computer, as it started to become the behemoth in the personal computing revolution, and then mobility, et cetera, right? So that was just in our DNA. There's a culture about risk taking when it comes to innovation and seeing the benefit of innovation and how it could just revolutionize life in the world and how things are done every day. So that aspect was always there. We knew what the benefit would be to looking at innovation and thinking about how you would innovate in different fields. I recall a very specific moment where me and my brother growing up were always talking about companies, because again, in following our father and kind of looking at him as a mentor, we both got the bug about starting our own companies. We didn't know what it was. We just would talk about it, right? Just following whatever he did. We actually wanted to start in the area of sporting goods because we grew up doing outdoor sports here in California, surfing and skateboarding and skiing and all that stuff. So we wanted to start a sporting goods company. And I remember our dad telling us one day, he was just kind of, we would always have these conversations in the family. And he would say, there was a specific moment where he just kind of got tired of us talking about ideas and said, look, you guys can start anything you wanted. At this time, we were talking about starting a sporting good company. And he said, whatever you choose to do, even if it's a sporting good company, think about how you can add value back to the industry or to the thing that you want to work in. Mm-hmm. And think about how can you innovate to bring technology in to make that thing better. And so we thought about what that could be for sporting goods. It initially started with nanotechnology and wanting to make better materials, make them stronger and make them longer lasting. And that was a very interesting exploration. That initial idea didn't work, but that's kind of how we pivoted to sustainability, where we saw the need and it was a much better match for the things we were developing in material science and using our skills in engineering and chemistry. I had to find in that journey also the opportunity where the innovation was actually needed, wanted, and could improve and have an impact in that field. And I think sustainability is a huge need in every industry. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for the new entrepreneurs to also focus on that, because it's still kind of niche. Like even though the world's been focused on sustainability maybe the past few decades, it's still a very niche thing if you think about the total global economy.
Yeah, I think especially at this time, a lot of the entrepreneurs now are more focused on how to bring in sustainability in their business model. At first, it might be like an afterthought, but at this time, it's much needed, right? And everyone's feeling it. So, Ray, as far as your experience is concerned, and seeing things right now, what role does sustainability play in the current crisis? I mean, in light of this COVID crisis, how crucial it is right now.
Yeah, I think COVID has maybe highlighted what's kind of been broken in our system and in our economies of the world. I don't think it hasn't removed the need for it. That's for sure. It's highlighted the opportunity that the world needs to reimagine how it's set up, its infrastructure, its economies, its dependencies on raw materials. Just because if you look at things like shortages in these types of crises, the fact that we have this global economy that has centralized resources, centralized manufacturing, centralized logistics, those things fall apart in these types of situations. If you had more distributed systems in the world, right, more local manufacturing, which by default tends to be more sustainable, you could actually address some of these shortages and the kind of emergencies that you run into when you have this type of crisis. Now, for specific areas, maybe there are like short-term impacts where you have to avoid sustainability just due to safety concerns. Like I think here in California, we're very conscious about plastics, single-use plastic. I think it'll go back to that eventually when hopefully when the pandemic subsides. But those are like near-term effects on sustainability that pandemics have. Now, if we had better solutions to that, better technologies, like what if we had better sterilization techniques or better systems to use re-sterilized materials? Look at N95 masks, for example, right? They're all single use. Out of necessity, healthcare workers had to figure out how to sterilize them in real time so they could reuse them due to shortages. But what if we didn't have to do that? What if you had materials that were permanently sterile, right? You need technologies to solve those types of issues. And those are the opportunities ahead of us where now that we know what it's like to live in a pandemic, our entrepreneurs should be thinking about and reimagining how the world can be after a pandemic. What are the technologies we need to not only survive a pandemic, but be more sustainable, be more economic, have a better impact on the planet while doing it? I think on those kinds of terms. I think we've been living in a disposable economy and disposable society for too long, and it's a bad habit. But we need to figure out globally how we can break that.
Yeah, I so agree with that, Ray. I think for most of us, or actually especially the entrepreneurs, the pandemic, I mean, this period is also a unique experience for us because I think in the last decade, this is the first time that entrepreneurs are faced with a worldwide crisis, right? I mean, when Silicon Valley started, you've had the financial crisis, but this one is healthcare, economic, all rolled into one. So I think the opportunities that you've mentioned are also pretty much one way to look at it from a different perspective. And thank you so much for that input. So Ray, when you talk about local manufacturing and sourcing out local materials, actually, that's one of the drives that's happening right now in the Philippines. A lot of startups are, because of the pandemic, most are looking inwards, looking at what are the local resources that they could, utilize, take advantage of. So, what can you advise you can give to our startups and our social enterprises who are looking to venture into sustainability or developing sustainability innovations?
Yeah. Well, it's one thing I've always observed in my many interactions in the Philippines and trying to look at how the economy could grow there. We're dependent on a lot of things in the Philippines. We have resources. There are some resources we don't have, like energy. We have to import a lot, right? Hopefully we can utilize things like solar and think of how you can harness global access to have domestic supply of energy. But there are other things we're rich in. Biodiversity we're one of the richest ecosystems on the planet, especially marine biodiversity. I think what's great about the Philippines is we're conscious of that. We've been protecting it. The government's been doing a good job about recognizing that, and even the rainforest to an extent. But there's always ways to continue expanding that. I think exploring what are domestic resources we have there that not to be exploited, but can be used to our advantage. Because there are things unique to the Philippines that might not exist anywhere else in the world. Especially for me, biodiversity is the biggest example. How could we also think about reimagining agriculture? We were a powerhouse in rice and agriculture. If you think back to the 60s and 70s, how can you get there again? I know there's a lot of hurdles it's a very complicated system that we have, but that's the opportunity for the entrepreneurs to think about. How can you be so clever to weave through whatever complicated ecosystem there is and think of a unique way to take advantage of what we have there?
Ray, just last question on sustainability. So, in your experience, how do you measure sustainability of a product or innovation? Do you have a metric that you use? Do you have a tool that you use? So, how do you go about measuring it?
Sure. It's good. The answer is going to differ depending on the product. Um, I think the most common tool is called life cycle assessment, LCA, commonly referred to. Um, and there are all kinds of different things that make up a life cycle assessment, but that's probably the most universal approach. It's like you can even use like major in fields of study where you focus on that type of tool development. Um, and it's really a measure of the impact of a product, or typically a product, but on the environment. So the measure of the impact on the environment, on people as well, on humans, and then ecosystems. So it's kind of tries to be an all-encompassing method for measuring like toxicity, greenhouse gas emission, which is kind of your measurement of carbon footprint or impact on the environment, and then a few other things: natural resource usage, water usage, energy usage, et cetera, things like that. So you kind of try to have a lumped up score, if you will, to measure a product's impact. And that's used back when we started our first company in 2008. We were one of the first companies to really use that for our product category. I would say it's also just like sustainability in general compared to the global economy. LCAs are still a niche approach or practice. But what's been cool is through the past dozen years or so I've been working in this space, we've seen other bigger companies now also adopt the use of LCAs. And through partnership with like some of the companies me and my brother helped start, we're helping these companies figure out how to use those tools to not only use our materials, but use it across the entire set of materials that are used to build a product. And so that's really cool. It's a quantifiable, measurable way. Now there's still room for improvement. And I think the exciting thing is like that could be an area of innovation, is like, how do we get better about metrics and measuring sustainability in a quantifiable way that's not just for the science of it, but also that's communicable to the market. Because I do see the market also getting more savvy. Consumers are being more educated about their purchases. We're more conscious as a society about eco-friendly products. And we don't want brands pulling the wool over our eyes. We don't want greenwashing when we buy these products. And so it's now up to the brands to adopt these sustainability practices so they can communicate that to their customers and not just have greenwashed marketing messages. And so I think the world is just getting more sophisticated with all this. And so you will see the adoption of these metrics, and eventually, hopefully it becomes commonplace practice. I think the startups, I think about a story around when my first company, when we were trying to define sustainability for ourselves, and we used a lot of third-party groups to try to define to try to represent our sustainability. And I remember talking with some folks at Patagonia about sustainability. And if you're familiar with Patagonia, they're probably one of the leading brands in terms of like using sustainability as a core belief in the company and the brand, and then using that to make their products better for the planet and for people, et cetera. And I remember them telling me specifically, don't be afraid to tell your own story when it comes to sustainability. If the world isn't doing a good enough job about its metrics and living up to your standards, define your own standards and make them and communicate them to your market. So there's nothing wrong with a startup being able to define it. Now, you don't want to do greenwashing. You want to be quantifiable. You want to be legit with that story that you're building. And so you want to use science behind it. But yeah, startups, you shouldn't be afraid to roll up your sleeves and really understand the sustainability story behind your products and be able to communicate that correctly to the market. Because if you can become a leader in that, you're an innovator, right? And so there's still an opportunity to do that as well.
Agree. So, Ray, thank you so much for all the input. So I'm sure a lot of the viewers of our story would want to know you better. I mean, you're a second interviewee. So we're going to do rapid fire questions, okay? Is that okay? So, okay, first off, okay, Ray, what's your favorite Filipino food?
Well, I can't deny this. Since I was a little kid, suman.
Suman.
My my Lola there made the best suman, and even when she lived with us in the States, she kept making suman. So I've been eating suman since before I could remember.
Does Maria create suman or gabi? Do you
I
know?
I only eat suman when I go to the Philippines. Nothing has replaced it.
I'll send a recipe to Maria or the gabi.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so favorite social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, or TikTok.
I'm too old to be part of the newer platforms, and my kids would be so embarrassed if they found out I ever even used or looked at the newer platforms. So I'm 100% Instagram. I'm just kind of a fan of photos in general. I'm less about kind of the social aspect of it, more about just viewing cool photos and getting ideas for things. So I'm a visual person, so Instagram for sure.
Yeah, me too for sure. So, what was the last book you've read?
Well, I'm in the middle of it, but I'm really enjoying it. It's called The Barbarian Days of Surfing, and it tells the story of um, just kind of a surfer who grew up in the like late 50s through early 60s and the revolution of surfing. But it was a Pulitzer Prize winning book, and it tells just a great story of this guy's journey from California to Hawaii to all over these unknown surf spots as he kind of journeyed through a life as a surfer. So it's a very visual book, and me as a surfer, I really identify with these locations that he's going to in Hawaii and in the Pacific. So I'm really enjoying that book. I highly recommend it. I'm not
I'm gonna
done with
look
it.
for it.
Yeah,
Okay, so are you a morning person or night owl?
definitely a night owl. I don't know. It's in my DNA. I think I might have gotten it from my parents.
Okay, so what was the best advice you received?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, Probably to trust my instinct. Um, yeah, I think I've been around the block enough to have gone through different situations where I didn't trust my instinct. And what people always tell you, when you feel it in your gut, you kind of know. I've just had been through enough things as an entrepreneur where I just try to trust that gut instinct. With anything, with people, with decisions for businesses, or just kind of how things are feeling with your startup. Like, I try to go with that. I try to go inform, make sure I have all the information. But at the end of the day, if you go with your gut and you commit to that, that's that accountability thing, right?
Mhm.
Trying to be accountable. So go with your gut.
Cool, cool. Okay, so and what advice you would give your younger self?
Um, wow. I wasted a lot of time as a youth. I look back and I wonder, what did I do with all that time? Probably to just have been more productive. I don't know. Like, there's life has so much to offer. I probably would have like learned to play more instruments or gotten into more hobbies. I would have done more artwork and painting and yeah, just I think life has so much to offer. So just take advantage of it, when it's there.
I agree, agree. So, right now, what is your dream? I mean, what is your dream today, nowadays?
Um, I think finding a better balance in life. That's one thing that I've always, people tell themselves that.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
think if you're an entrepreneur, you can't help yourself when it comes to like chasing ideas and taking risks. And I always keep telling myself, "Oh, I'm gonna take a sabbatical, or I'm gonna take some time off in between things." And I still haven't. I still haven't done that. So one of these days, who knows when it's gonna be? Um, maybe after whenever this next idea, how far it goes, um, maybe that's what I'll do is I'll take a sabbatical and kind of work on that better life balance, spending time with family
mm-hmm.
and friends, and going to, travel. And one day when we can travel again, and just experiencing life. So making sure to have that balance, that's kind of my dream.
Okay, so
Okay.
Ray, thank you so much for the time. If our viewers would want to get in touch with you or Firestarter, how can they contact Firestarter? Do you have an email, a website?
Yeah, I mean, my like there's X the Moonshot Factory. If you just Google that, you'd see what that is. And then my email is Reyban, Reyban @x.team.
Mm-hmm.
So they can contact me there.
Okay, all right. So again, Ray, thank you so much. And to all our viewers, don't forget to leave us a like if you find today's episode interesting. You may also want to leave a message in the comment section for topics that we can discuss in the future. So, of course, lastly, please subscribe and follow us on PhilDev if you want to learn more about innovation and entrepreneurship. You can find PhilDev on Facebook at facebook.com/Philippine Development. Our Instagram and Twitter handler are at PhilDev_org. And of course, please watch out for our weekly episode. Again, thank you so much. Stay healthy and safe. All right. Thanks, Ray.
All right. Good to see you, Emil.